Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, a very good friend of mine and hilarious comedian, Brian Zeolla. What's going on, man?
Hi there. Hey, Brennan, my ex-drinking buddy. Hey.
So what's going on? How you been, man?
Oh, man. You know, it's 7 to 12 months of not seeing anyone.
Yeah, that's
true. Being in my home.
Well, Brian Zeolla is a very funny comedian based out of Jacksonville, Florida now. Why don't you plug everything up top, tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay. You can find me on pretty much everything, just my name, Brian Zeolla. That's Zeolla. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Yeah, I'm out there. I'm doing shit. I have shows. If you're in Jacksonville, I host a monthly show called Powder Keg at Hyperion Brewing. But other than that, I can be found making people angry on the internet.
Yeah, we've got a show coming up the 16th of October at Hyperion.
October 16th. And then whatever the third Friday of November is.
Yeah, whatever day that is.
Yeah. It's a Friday. I know that.
So how you been doing with the comedy in the pandemic?
Oh, man. You know, I've
time.
done so little of it. I didn't really like the whole, doing it on Facebook Live or whatever, you know.
Yeah, did you do... I talked to Marcus
shows.
About this. Did you do... How many of those did you do?
I did one stand-up show.
Okay.
I avoided them pretty big at the beginning, and then by July, I think is when I did the one. I was like, I have to do something.
Yeah.
We did Zach Bennett shows.
Yeah,
and
the
those
sketch
were
shows.
more silly.
Yeah, just fun.
Yeah, just having fun, character or just conversation. But the stand-up is so awkward. It's just not how I know how to do stand-up. So yeah, I don't like doing it.
I completely agree. The hardest part is not having the interaction with the audience.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the hardest thing. You can, I made the mistake too of the one show I did. I watched one right before my show. Yeah. And it was Maria Bamford and Ron Funches.
Okay.
And people were reacting to that. And because those people are two of the funniest people in the country. And so people were laughing in their mics and you can hear it and people are applauding. And then I go to my show and no one wants to make noise because they think they're doing something wrong. They think they're getting, I don't know. It's just so weird. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I tried to do one and it was too awkward because my whole thing is telling kind of stories. So I need people to interact while I'm doing, same thing. I remember we did that one show at the McMansion and you were in the middle of the joke and the girl just shouted out, "Adopted." And you were like, all right, that's it. I'm done.
Wait, where was this? A McMansion?
Remember at Ted's show?
Yeah, that's
God,
right.
that was a mess.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so we started doing shows in Florida again. We're now doing
know, I've only done mine.
Okay, so you haven't done the Eclipse,
No, I didn't do Eclipse. And I haven't done, I haven't gone down to Daytona. I know they're doing shows.
Yeah.
But.
Well, I talked to Zach down there, and he's kind of given the reins to
Kevin Tibbert.
Yeah. Because I even asked him. I said, what's going on? Because Zach Bennett is Daytona comedy, in a way. And so I had asked him, kind of what was going on with him and everything, and he just said that kind of what we're all feeling, which is it's just not right now. Everything's weird.
I mean, I don't. That was the hardest thing about me putting my show together that first month was I don't want to ask people and then feel like they have to say yes because but also if you don't want to do the show, don't do the show. If you're uncomfortable with it, I get it. I'm kind of uncomfortable with it too. And I've turned down shows because of that, you know? But I knew that I had control over what was going to happen at my show. It was outdoors. So theoretically it's better, I don't know. But it's a weird thing because, I put up in one of our Facebook groups, who wants to do this show? I'm not going to ask you. You have to ask me because I don't know who wants it, Yeah.
And it's a weird time right now because of that. Well, obviously with the pandemic and the health issues and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the main thing.
Yeah. And it's bizarre. And I was talking to Marcus about this too, but it's weird for me. And I know he said the same thing. And I know you're still working. And I've been back at work now for 6 months, 5 months. So it's one of those weird things where it's I'm doing everything I was doing before, obviously still taking the precautions that we're supposed to be taking, but I just don't have comedy in my life. And that's been like...
And it's a huge part of our lives.
Yeah.
You know, I have a dead-end job because comedy is more important to me.
Yeah, same thing with me.
You know, it's like, now that I don't have comedy, I just have a job I hate.
Yeah, and it's oh my god, it's the worst.
And then you also realize, you know, I'm not at a high level of comedy, but I did get income from it, and I am missing that income. You know what I mean? Like,
everybody listening, Brian is being incredibly modest. He did open at 3 theater shows for Dimitri Martin just a few months ago.
No, it was not a few months ago.
Well, it
was exactly 10 months ago.
You have to take the pandemic out of it. I
had a real solid start of the year, and then nothing.
That was all the way back in January?
That was, the end of January.
Oh,
25th, 6th, and 7th, I think.
That was awesome, though.
It was fun. It was great. And I really thought 2020 was my year.
Yeah. I was supposed to be in New York, so we all thought, I think we all thought 2020.
Yeah. I had 3 festivals booked. And
yeah, because you were doing so you do the festival. Do you do that festival in Austin every year?
Not every year. So I do it. I've done it often. I've done it.
Now, what is it? Tell the listeners what we're talking about.
Yeah, so this is, I think, one of the best festivals in the country. It's Altercation Comedy Festival, and it's run by my friend JT Habersat, who I tour with.
Yeah.
And he's taken me on the road for the last 6 years, probably 6 years. I've been on the road with him. So he has put me on. I was on the first one, the third one, and the fourth one, or something like that. I've done 3, and I was. And they're a blast. It's altercation comedy. It's like, I've opened for Kyle Kinane on one of the festivals. I opened for Billy Wayne Davis last year.
Oh wow.
And it's just a lot of fun. And you know, I get on it because it's not why I get on it, but I tour with the guy.
I know the owner.
He loves me. He knows that I'm gonna do the job. So
yeah.
And then I was on Bird City Comedy Festival in Phoenix, and that got canceled. That was in March. So they were the first thing to cancel before everything canceled.
Yeah.
Like, they saw that South by Southwest was having problems, and then they were like, well, we don't feel comfortable doing this. And then the whole world shut down.
Yeah.
And then I was supposed to be on Fest in October, in Gainesville, which is like a punk rock festival with a lot of bands and stuff. And that's my favorite time of the year. And that got canceled too. So
did you imagine, so after you do the theater tour, and then we're all hanging out, and we think, all right, here we go, 2020.
Yeah.
And then this all starts happening. Because did you imagine it was going to be October, and we're all still kind of like...
I had no idea. I mean, you know, at that time, of course not. At January, I had no idea this was coming.
Yeah.
By March, when I started having to cancel stuff, like I canceled the festival, I canceled the tour that was around the festival, I lost some paying gigs in Florida.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's a big thing that you do is when you have a festival, and for a lot of people listening who aren't in comedy, a lot of times you'll schedule other shows around a bigger
Not everyone
event.
will do that. I definitely will. I want to be on the road.
Yeah.
And I have a fear of flying, so I won't get in a plane. So to me, I'm getting in my car anyway.
Yeah.
I don't want to drive to Phoenix in one drive. And
Yeah.
I don't want to just get a hotel room halfway through. Like, I'm going to get 5 shows on the way, break up the drive, get money.
Yeah.
Because you'll make more money off of doing those shows than the festival. The festival is for networking and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You get paid, but you know what I mean? Like, I can sell more merch probably at a show than I would at a festival.
For sure.
Yeah. So
you had
that's
a
what
lot
I always
booked.
do. I always tour like that.
Yeah.
But that all got shut down.
Yeah, and it was weird because I remember when it happened, as someone who studied history in college and stuff, I was like, well, the government's not going to shut it all down. Like, they've never done that before.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend was kind of panicking, and I was just like, it's going to be fine. Like, there's like this kind of stuff happens, but we're going to be okay. And then we weren't.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't. And I was like, oh, this might last a lot longer than any of us anticipated. Because
and it's funny because there was a lot of rogue stuff happening too, where, you know, people just did stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Bars stayed open.
Yeah.
But that is not anyone that I am dealing with when I'm booking shows or performing for or anything. Like, all the people that I'm working with are pretty reasonable and are like, hey man, there's a pandemic. We're not going to do those shows anymore.
Yeah, and it was weird because I've told the story before on the podcast, but when I we did the show up in Dayton, it's like Dayton is really weird the way it works. So it's it's sad to say, but it's an incredibly almost like segregated area. Mm-hmm. So it's like Trump country on one side, and then it's a vast majority of minorities on another side. Mm-hmm. So when I went to go do the show in Dayton, the bar that I did it at is in the middle of the Trump country kind of land. Mm-hmm. So it was so weird because everyone's there. We did it outdoors. I was trying to be socially distant, and people are coming up trying to like shake your hand and like give you a hug and like get real close and tell you what's fun. And I'm like, get the fuck away from me. Like, what is happening?
That's not how this works.
Yeah, like
we're dipping our toes in, and you're just shoving me in the pool with my cell phone in my pocket.
Exactly.
Like, no, I don't want that.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
I was checking if it's cold. Get off of me.
Yeah, because I literally I got to the point where because it was like I said, I told the story so everyone knows it's the bar that my mom owns and her my stepdad. But I got to the point where I was telling like their coworkers and some of their friends like, no, like you got to get away from me. Because it's one of those weird things too, because where it's located and it being my mom and stepdad's bar, everyone just assumes I'm like, hell yeah, fuck this is a hoax. I'm like, no, I don't think that at all. I listen to science.
Yeah.
Like, I understand you guys don't even probably have the internet up here, but I understand what's going on.
Yeah. So, and I, we hung out early on. I think pretty early on. Like maybe
it was March or April.
April even.
Yeah.
And like, I remember you were a little less worried for yourself.
Yeah.
Like I'm a physically fit person who isn't feeling symptomatic. Like I'm comfortable coming to your house.
Yeah.
And I know that you, on the other hand, would never like if somebody isn't that you wouldn't like get in their face and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's so many people that just don't care. And it's not even Trump people or it's not MAGA people. It is for sure. But then
but then there's another level.
There's also just people that will walk into the gas station without a mask on, cough on the credit card reader, and like you're like, well, why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this to like anyone? Like
it doesn't make any sense to me because it's not that hard, and they've got masks out now. Like I love wearing my thick boy mask.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious and I love it.
Yeah.
So I love to wear my mask outside, but there's just people
fashion, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just some of these people who just refuse. And I'll admit, early on, I was kind of like, I had that weird tweak in my brain where I was like, wait a second, the government's shutting down my source of income. And then I became angry, like everybody.
Yeah.
I was like, you can't do this. Like the whole reason, after I got sober, the whole reason I'm alive is to do comedy. Because I told my sponsor when I first got sober, I was like, if I'm just going to meetings every day and working 2 jobs, I'm just going to fucking kill myself. Like this is, 100%. I have to have something. And he said, well, why don't you get back into comedy? And I've told you this story before. And then I started doing comedy again and got really invested in it. And then the government just took it away.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I was so angry. And I remember being one of those pieces of shit who was like, they can't fucking tell me what to do, da da da. And then after like a day, I was like, oh wait, like this is killing people. Yeah. Like maybe we should.
And then you also see your government saying constantly, like, we need to open it up. And like we don't live in a democratic state, so we see our people being like, this shouldn't be closed. This shouldn't be closed. Yeah. The people want this open. Trump is saying this shit, and you're like, well, I guess it's not the government shutting us down.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
There must be another power to be. It must be Q.
Well, speaking of not shutting stuff down, you hail from the state of not shutting anything down.
Well,
you're originally from Texas.
Florida and Texas have been so lockstep and like not giving a shit about anyone. Like Greg Abbott's done some of the worst shit. I mean, the most recent one is the one per county mail-in ballot drop-off point. Like,
is that what they're doing?
One spot in each county for you to go and do it. So now they have like lines up the wazoo of like cars waiting to get their ballots dropped off. It's just voter fraud. You know, it's just suppression. It's voter suppression. So fuck Texas, fuck Florida, fuck Georgia.
But you were raised in Texas?
So I grew up in I was like a little kid in Texas, and then I moved to New York, like my late elementary years, and then I did all of middle school in Chicago, And then I moved back to Texas and did all of high school and
Okay,
further.
yeah, because you have a couple jokes about it, and so I just assumed you went from Texas to Florida.
No, yeah, I mean, I lived most of my life in Texas, and I consider myself a Texan.
Yeah.
In that way, and
Okay.
yeah, and edit point.
Dallas Nelson, ladies and gentlemen, surprise visit. What's going on, man? Well, not really a surprise visit. I'm in your
It's
home.
not a visit.
Dallas, you're going up next.
All right.
We're filming the podcast.
Filming.
We're recording the podcast. I'm not editing that out.
Okay, or if you say so.
Yeah. Visit from Dallas Nelson, everybody.
I'd say that Chicago was very formative for me. I found a lot of music there and stuff. I became a punk kid in
Yeah,
Chicago.
because you're huge into music.
Yeah, and that was a huge part of my life growing up. But yeah, I'm a Texan. Like, that's who I'm from Houston.
Now, what? Tell the audience the music, because you were doing this thing. Was that last month? The ska
Timber. Yeah. That was my friend. Like, created the hashtag Jay Chenoyne. He's a comic from the East Coast, and he was like, I'm gonna review. I'm gonna listen to and review ska albums every day for the month of September, and then me and a couple other comics jumped on it, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But also, I don't want to hear ska music again for a little while. I'm pretty content only listening to like Iron and Wine for the next year.
Okay.
So yeah, I grew up in punk music. I've been all over the place in music.
Yeah.
Punk's still super important to me though.
Yeah, because there was some of the stuff you had posted. I was like, God, I haven't seen this since my older brother was listening to this stuff back in the day.
Yeah. Well.
So
I'm old.
You're not that much older than me.
I don't know how much older I am than you, but I'll never tell.
So Texas, you were in oil in Texas, correct?
So that was like my job through my 20s.
Yeah.
I built oil valves in a warehouse.
Okay. Because I wanted to circle back to what we were talking about before, and I know you have a bit about it, so I don't know if you want to burn it or not.
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't even know what bit you're talking about.
So you retired from oil to do comedy.
Yeah, that's an old bit. Yeah, I did.
It's no Jason's Deli. It's no Jason's Deli.
Jesus
I'll tell
Christ,
you
watch my YouTube. Don't do that, folks. Yeah, I mean, I did. I had like a real job all through my 20s. It was like, it wasn't a good job, but when you're 22 and you have a 401k, you think like, I fucking figured life out.
Yeah, I got it.
mean? I fucking,
it's over, baby.
Yeah. What college was? Who would have done that? I got a 401k. I'm 22, and so I did that for most of my 20s, and then it just started like wearing on me.
Mm-hmm.
I started comedy when I was 27, and at that time I was working nights in the warehouse, and I was like in a supervisory role, and like it was a real thing. This is, and so like I'm looking at this, and I'm like, this is gonna be the rest of my life.
Yeah.
If I keep doing this, I don't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to start doing comedy, but I worked nights, so I couldn't. And they told me that I couldn't switch to day shifts, so I was like, all right, here's my notice. This is more important to me. I have a bunch of money saved in my 401k. And I looked at it this way. I looked at it like, at 27 years old, I can try this for a few years. And if it's impossible, if it's something that does not work at all, most of the people I know in their 30s do not have a retirement fund yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I can start over.
Yeah.
And it's a dumb choice, but it's not the dumbest choice. You know what I mean? Like it's not something I'm not going to recover from.
Yeah.
And so I started comedy 27, and it really, I mean, and that kind of goes also with this podcast. The reason I also needed that change was I worked nights. I got off at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I was drinking at the time. I'm also sober now.
Yeah.
And I would drink like 2 or 3 bottles of wine from like 6 in the morning till 11 in the morning.
Living in Texas.
Yeah.
And ladies
so I'm
and gentlemen,
just like, the sun is just bleeding into my windows as I drink red wine by myself.
the wine aesthetic is hilarious because Brian's a bigger guy, and you're living in Texas. You're working in oil.
gas station wine. Dude,
No,
let's not make it sound like.
I just imagine you drinking whiskey, smoking cigarettes, and you're like, no, I got this Bordeaux from the 7-Eleven.
Yeah, or barefoot. But yeah, I would just drink shitty wine and I would watch YouTube by myself as the sun came up, and then I'd go to sleep from 11 a.m. till I went to work at like 3 or 4.
Yeah,
and
that's
it was
the life,
not good.
man.
It was gross. It was bad.
It's really funny you say that, because I was in that same point, and I was watching Netflix on my phone, like doing shots in a dark room by myself in Oklahoma City when I was living with my cousin for a little while. And he would come in and be like, why don't you like go out if you're going to drink? And I'm like, I am socially drinking with my friends on Netflix. And it's like, that's not
Chandler's here.
Yeah.
Phoebe's here.
Yeah. I'm watching Jersey Shore. I'm beating the beat up in the room by myself. But yeah, it's definitely not the most fun existence.
Yeah, that was definitely my worst drinking point, because when it's alone, it's just such a bummer, you know? And the reason I've always gravitated towards wine, because I don't have a taste for alcohol. I hate it.
Yeah.
Like beer sucks to me. I hate the taste. There are different, like the girlier the mixed drink, I'm going to like more, I'm that guy. Like I need the sugar to sweeten it up. Like whiskey shots and stuff, I can do them. But here's the thing is, because I hate the taste, I do them faster. Like a beer, if you hand me a beer, I'm going to do the whole thing right there, because I don't want to sip on this. It tastes like shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I'm just a fucking college boy just pounding beers and hitting them against my head and like fucking like, because
let's do this.
Because what I really want is just pink lemonade flavored things.
Yeah. Well, you did the
well, that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember we did a show. What was that? Where you did the Smirnoffs?
Yeah, so I've done that a few times. I've done it 3, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is the greatest sight you'll ever see. Brian comes on stage and houses a 6-pack of Smirnoffs
in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, not even. Yeah,
probably less. Yeah. Well, that's the thing I learned when I was partying and shit in my early 20s, is that I can just drown shit real fast. It's like the Ziggy Zoggy band show shit, and like, and it's specifically with like something like a Smirnoff like that, I can just boom, like shotgun right down my body.
Well, and I remember when you were doing it, I was like, he's gonna throw up.
Yeah.
Like, this is a lot of sugar. It's not even the alcohol content, really.
It's not the alcohol content. It's the sugar that fucks you up, and it gets you fucked up real quick because it's so much sugar going to your brain, and then that alcohol, which is gross, and then it's just like. So yeah, I did like 6 of them in a row.
And you've done that more than once.
Houston. A girl pretty much broke up with me over it.
Really?
I don't want to ever see you like that again, and I don't think you won't do that again.
Oh my God.
Yeah. This is after being sober for so long. So.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I didn't make it a regular thing.
Yeah.
But I did it kind of yearly for a little while.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I tell my girlfriend all the time, because she'll say random things like, it's just kind of sad that we're never going to be able to like sit out on a deck in New York and drink margaritas and people watch. And I go, no, we can do that. It'll be really fun for like a month. But then when you're coming home and paying all the bills and I'm passed out on the floor and there's dog shit everywhere, you're going to be like, something's not good about this. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, we can do whatever you want, but it's not going to last.
You just got to learn the joy of virgin daiquiris.
Yeah. Well, they're good. They're slushies.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
That's what I realized when I stopped drinking, was like, oh, I just want to hang out with people and drink things that taste good.
Yeah.
So like when I started like classing it up a little bit and not just pounding shit, like if I went to shows and stuff and I would drink, I always drink Cape Cods, because fucking cranberry juice and vodka is good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
it's way more drinkable than like just a shot of whiskey, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I would, and then people would make fun of me because I drink Cape Cods. Well, now I'm sober and I drink Shirley Temples, so go suck my dick.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing too, is because we're the circles that we run in. I mean, me, you, Crespo, Buck, Dallas, Baker, like we are silly people anyway. Like we just like to have a good time. Yeah. And it's weird. Something I've learned being sober and doing comedy and stuff is being around like patrons of the shows. and they have to get like hammered in order to be in those situations. And I'm just like,
it's really funny because this scene specifically, the Jacksonville scene, is really chill about it's not a drinking scene. It's not a druggy scene. Like, people do stuff, but it's nothing excessive. Like, I've been in cokey scenes.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And you see, like, the drinking that happens in some of the scenes around
Dude, I started
Florida.
comedy in South Florida. Like, that was... I was one of those people in that scene. But I know Crespo and I talked about it last week, and that's the thing with the Jacksonville scene is almost nobody really drinks that much. And if they drink...
Not heavily.
Yeah, and if they drink, they'll have a couple of... Like, very rarely... do you see people get like fucking obliterated and then try to get up? Because him and I were having this conversation, and you and I have had this conversation too about when people get really fucked up and then try to get up on stage.
It's the worst.
Yeah, and we're just like, you're just wasting time.
Yeah,
like we've all written material, we're all ready to go, and now you're just up here killing time.
Yeah,
and I can't stand it. That's like, I want to get up there and hit him, but then everyone's gonna be like, oh, look at Brennan, totally being Brennan.
And that is, I'm super happy I started comedy after I got sober, because for me, it would be trying to find that perfect concoction that like what is the code for how much I can drink to do what I do.
Yeah.
And I would never find it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing that happened with me. So I started in South Florida, and I like started at 21, 22. And I would just get hammered.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I didn't have any material. And I've talked about this before, but going through like old joke books from 2009, 2010, I'm like, this is all dog shit.
Yeah.
Like all of this. And I would get hammered and I would get on stage and be like, oh, well, I tell jokes to my friends and they laugh, so I can do it on stage. And it was horrific because I could never find that balance of enough, like a couple of drinks to feel loose, but not enough to where I'm like blacked out on stage.
Yeah.
And it's a mess.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare for me because I already can't. I've gotten much better about it. Obviously, I'm very good at comedy. I've gotten much better at like figuring out the little things that happen on stage and how they work and if they're repeatable things. Mm-hmm. But like early on, my first couple of years, like I was chasing a lot of moments that were only ever going to be that one time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
And if I were drinking, chasing that, I would not be where I'm at. You know?
Yeah. I remember I did a show. It was a Christmas show at a strip club off of Mayport, and it was called like Ha Ha Ha's and Ho Ho Ho's or something like that. And Crespo and I were talking about it, but it was the first because I think he had done that show like a year prior, and it was the first time I had done comedy in like 6 months. And so I just got obliterated before I went on stage, and I tried to tell the story of spending the $27,000 or $26,000 in 28 days, which I've told on this podcast before. But imagine that like epic of a story with all the details hammered. Like I was leaving stuff out. I kept having to like go back, and like everyone's just kind of looking at me like, this is kind of interesting, but we can't follow anything. And
that's it. We're not set up punch dudes. So it's not like all. You have A and then B. That's not us. We have these long, drawn out, like if I didn't mention this thing here and I start doing this shit over here and it makes no sense to people. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't tell you I was adopted. Yeah.
So that's why you're not going to understand this whole bit. Yeah. So, and that's when I kind of realized, and that's actually the point when I stopped doing comedy for that 3 years because I was like, I can't do this.
You chose drinking.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, I can't do both, so I'm just going to get hammered over here and do my own thing. But I think it's interesting what you said earlier about how you decided to start doing comedy at 27 and leave your job and everything, because you had said, it might have been a dumb decision, but I could always go back. But I think the difference between people who look back on things and go, man, I really wish I would have tried that, and then the people you hear about, whether it's on social media, it's just making that decision.
Yeah, and that was it. That was like where I'm looking at it is like, I can't have these regrets
Yeah.
that I didn't try it. And the problem is I did do one open mic. Like it was I had a day off. It was a Monday open mic, and I went and did it. And it's because I had been listening to all these podcasts and stuff, and I was super into stand up. And then I finally went and did it. And then the moment I did that, I was like, this is it. This is what I want. This is the thing I've been chasing for a long time. And like, I can't be reasonable right now and not try. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can't.
I know exactly.
I can't
what you
just
mean.
keep doing this fucking job because it's not where I ever saw myself. You know, and I'm not shitting on anyone that chooses a job over art. You know, because like I get it. I did not have a family. I did not have kids. I did not have anything that was stopping me. I had $10,000 in my 401k that I was just going to retire with.
There we go.
Do comedy for 3 months and then get a job delivering pizzas because it's 27 years old and I could. You know what I mean? And I don't regret a moment of that.
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't poor, but that's not a regret. That is a genie wish.
Yeah. But that's the thing is, so working in the service industry, I have guests that will come in and sometimes we get to talking and I'll tell them about how I went to school and I have 2 degrees and I was going to go to law school and I ended up not. And then they always hit me with that, well, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, so what I do now is I always tell them, you know, well, I work in the restaurant industry because it's incredibly flexible and I'm pursuing my dream of stand-up comedy. And I could just leave it there, but I'm a very petty individual. So then I go on to say, you know, so many people live their life with so many regrets at the end that they didn't chase any kind of dream. And I don't want that to happen to me. Enjoy your breakfast. And I walk away. But it's the truth. Like I have my older sister. I love her to death. She's the best person in my life, but she just works constantly.
Yeah.
And she's got security and she's got a house and she's got all this nice stuff. But I look at that and I always think like, I don't mind living in a studio apartment if, you know, making dog shit, if it means I get to go up on stage. And people, we're just wired different. Like you said, I'm not shitting on her decision. She's definitely doing way better than I am.
Yeah.
But I couldn't, that mentality of like just working. I don't understand.
But also, if you're not driven to art,
yeah,
which a lot
exactly.
of people aren't, you know, then you don't need to make that choice. That's not like everyone needs to choose between art. No, some people are broken in their brains and want to get on the stage and talk in front of people.
And you have to be really broken to want to do it.
You really do.
Yeah.
And so, like, if I'm that broken, I can't choose the other thing and just be broken in my head. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have to do this.
That's a great way to put it because I never thought of it like that. Like, because in my head, it's always been, why doesn't everybody pursue an art? But it's like, oh, if you're not damaged like that, you have no desire to do it.
Yeah.
You just, you know, you like going to work. You like your paycheck. You like your retirement.
Because you see those people do one open mic that are like, well, everyone in the office says I'm funny and I should try this. And you can see it in their dead cold eyes. They don't actually want to. Like they're just doing what everyone in their office said. That he's zingy. He's got
he's got a little wit.
He's got a thing, and it's like you don't want this, and then they never show up again because they don't want it. And it is way different than just hanging out with your friends and being conversational. Because stand-up comedy is a skill. It's an art, you know.
Yeah, and we see that at some of the open mics where people come up and they go, "Oh, I'm really funny. I'm just gonna wing it."
Yeah,
and we all look at each other like, "You didn't write anything down? You don't have any sort of set list?" No, I'll just wing it. And then they get up there and they some of us, that happens to some of us now.
Yeah.
10 years into comedy, I get up there and if my first couple jokes don't land, all of a sudden I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah. You're doing all the math in your head.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah. And
I'm like, okay, I know where I started. I know where I'm going. If that didn't work, that's definitely not going to work. But for them to get on stage and just kind of be like, I'll wing it. I'm the funny guy at the office. And then they get up there and it's the longest 5 minutes
oh my God.
of their life. And
I
feel so bad for them when they do that.
I do. And you're right. But then I'm like, well, these people don't care about it the way I do. So I have to like remove myself from the same category as them. So I can't be mad at them for treating it differently. But also I can't have any respect for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's true.
Because you know what wanting to do comedy is. You, Brennan, and me, Brian. It is this voracious appetite for watching a lot of stand-up before you start. It's listening to all these podcasts and like getting it all in and just like soaking it in. I mean, I listen to like Comedy Bang Bang and Doug Loves Movies and Nerdist and all that stuff before I started, like, and there was no way I wasn't going to start. And I was just doing homework by listening to that shit. You know what I mean? But, you know, now I don't listen to anything except Brennan is my ex-drinking buddy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher.
Boom. With the plug. But it's just, it's one of those.
I'm a professional.
But it's true, though. Like, you see those people get up and they get to the bar and they get hammered because you got to get hammered before your first time. Yeah, I'd be scared too.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me, and I think it's because I'm super emotional, like super sensitive, and I'm way overly empathetic towards people. So when they get up there, even my friends, like when Emily first came onto the scene, and she was super supportive, came to every show, loved it. She loved comedy. She had that voracious appetite. We're gonna get her on the podcast one of these days, but I remember when she first went up, I was terrified because she's my friend. And I was like, if she doesn't do well, it's like I'm not doing well. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like I felt so strongly about, like, you know, especially because it's a friend. I'm like, I hope she does. And she did really well her first time. And then her second time, she didn't do as well. But I was like, okay, but you.
Which is always the case.
Always.
That's how you know you're a real comic. That's the first thing you'll see when you're a real comic, is you do good your first time, and then the second time you're like, ugh.
Yeah. And then you come back to do it again.
Yeah.
That's when you've kind of crossed that threshold into, okay. And that's the weird thing about it, too, is because we've all had shows where we've just eaten a big old dick. Yeah. But it's so bizarre to me because, like you said, it's art, and everybody knows stand-up is. No matter how many people want to be like, it's not real art, it's fart and dick jokes. It's like, yeah, but
it's also art.
If you true, but also if you listen. Like, we're commenting on. It's so weird when people are like, "Oh, you should just stick to the yuck yucks." It's like this is my yuck yucks. Like, commenting on social things or political things or things that are going on in the world is the whole basis of my storytelling.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the whole point. And I remember I was talking to some family members a few weeks ago, and I was kind of working out some material on them. Like, just a couple of things that I was thinking about talking about on stage. And they were like, oh, I don't know if you should say that stuff. And immediately in my head, I said, I definitely need to say this stuff. Yeah. Because it's one of those things where I always like to push it to keep going, to like kind of see what I can get away with.
Sure. But also, it's there in your head, so there's a reason it's there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I hate that what you're talking about with comedy, where it's like, stick to the yuck yucks thing, because nobody goes and watches The Revenant and is like, stick to the bang bang guns, you jerks. I just want some explosives. Like, fuck off. That's not how art works.
Oh God, that's going in the clip for the promo.
It's just so frustrating. I don't know why comedy has to be this dumbed down thing, because it's not. The best comedians of all generations have been irreverent people.
Yeah.
You know? There's been some dumb ones. You know, there's always going to be a Larry the Cable Guy to your Bill Hicks. And that's fine. You can have those guys that stick to their yuck yucks. But the ones that get remembered forever are irreverent people. George Carlin. Bill Hicks. Lenny Bruce. Fucking, you know, Dave Chappelle. Even. You know, all of these people are irreverent people.
Did I tell you what my mom told me to do with Dave? So Dave lives right outside of Dayton. Everybody knows that.
Right, yeah.
And she goes, hey, we're doing the show up in Dayton. And she goes, you should reach out to Dave Chappelle. You should reach out to Dave Chappelle.
Did you do it?
No. First of all, there's probably layers of agents and managers and social media managers.
I don't know, man. He lives in Ohio.
I know.
Maybe not.
But I looked at her. I go, that's like inviting Taylor Swift to your karaoke night. Like, what? He's the greatest comedian of all time, arguably. Like, and you want me to invite him to a bar show? He comes to everything in Dayton. Okay, Mom. All right, cool. Invite Dave Chappelle. Oh, my God.
The trick is to invite his wife, and then he has to go.
Yeah.
That's how you get real comics.
Did you see his Emmy speech?
Yes, I did.
At the very end of it, where he goes into my wife, who's had to live with the best comedian of all time for the last 20 years. I was like, fuck yeah, man.
Yeah.
I love that. But it's like you said, The whole point, the whole driving force for me is, and I've said this a million times, but I feel like that scene in Jerry Maguire where I'm like, I have so much to say and no one to listen.
Yeah.
So that's why I get on stage. And that goes back to what you're saying earlier about that broken part. So I've literally substituted my obsession with trying to feel better with alcohol and drinking and drugs to that feeling on stage. One of the worst parts about this pandemic, obviously, from a comedy standpoint, I'm not saying this is the worst part. Obviously, the death and the loss of life and the loss of income for people and stuff is much worse. But just from a purely comedic standpoint,
sure,
the worst part of this pandemic is if you go up and bomb, it's weeks before you can do another show.
Yeah, when you just hold on to it.
Because that's what happened to me. I bombed in Dayton, and I literally thought about that for a month and a half. I got up at Veterans, and I did real well. And then I've been better since. And now I'm almost nervous to do another show because if it doesn't go well, it's like you're going to just hang on to it. And luckily here in Florida, we can do the outdoor shows and stuff. And I mean, now they're doing it everywhere. New York, who was super duper locked down, is even doing shows on rooftops and parking lots and stuff.
Well, and Florida's just opened up now.
Yeah.
So we can do shows inside too.
Yeah, I guess the governor came on and just said, I'm lifting all restrictions, but didn't kind of give any sort of guidance. So I know.
Well, that's because he doesn't want to be in trouble.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
that's all they do.
Yeah, because I work in 2 different restaurants, and I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean we're at full capacity? Do we still have to follow CDC guidelines? Do I still have to wear a mask? Like, what's happening? And everyone's just kind of like, we don't know. He just said all. And we were just like, okay. Yeah. But I guess, we can do shows whenever, wherever now. Got to open up Rain Dogs every Monday.
Well, Rain Dogs has been doing shows.
Have they?
Not comedy, but they've been doing music shows. So like it's available. I don't know. I don't know anymore.
That's insane.
I'm in a position where I don't really want to accept things right now. Like I'll do a couple things, like the one show we were talking about that was maybe this week. It was like I was asked a couple times, and I do want to support it and stuff like that. So I don't want to keep turning down stuff, but it's like I'm also uncomfortable with the COVID thing.
Yeah, and there's no way I'd be comfortable doing a show like at Rain Dogs.
Yeah,
in
so
that
small.
Packed room.
Yeah,
and I mean the room is perfect for comedy because it's low ceilings. It's everyone's up on the stage.
Black mold.
Yeah, black mold. But that's the weird thing about what we do is things that are conducive to comedy are completely anti everything that they've told us to be aware of for the virus.
Exactly.
So,
and that's why we're the ones hurt the most.
Yeah.
Like that we can't do our thing on live. Like we can't do our thing streaming because it's different because the audience isn't there. Whereas a band can just play their jams and, stream it and still make money doing that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's of course different for them. And I'm not saying it's not, but like comedy is such a fucking right in front of the audience thing.
Yeah, you have to be.
That it's just so hard to figure out how to make it work otherwise. That's why we're all biting at the tip to get back into it.
Oh yeah.
But it's like,
now you said you did a bunch of shows around music.
COVID.
You've done a bunch of shows around music, like at the music festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah. I've done a ton of a lot of festivals that have music and stuff. I've done. I early on, because I looked at people that I really respected in comedy and they were doing it, and like a Patton or a Brian Posehn and stuff like that. And it's like they work with bands sometimes.
Yeah.
So anytime an opportunity arose where I could open for bands or be in the middle of a middler for bands, I took it because it's
now
fun.
Tell me a little bit more. Tell us a little bit more about that experience, because I've only ever worked with bands once. Mm-hmm. And it was at a fundraiser for a sober thing at a bar, and there were 5 bands. Then there was a raffle. Then I was like the interim halftime show for 30 minutes, and then 5 more bands. And it was the worst experience.
That's the worst, of
my life.
So it's hard because you want to find something where it meshes.
Yeah.
So the best example of just like a show working would be that it's like comedy and then maybe 1, maybe 2 bands.
Okay.
You can't have a ton of bands, and you have to be as important to the show as the band. Like which is hard to do because generally people go to a music show to see music and then they have no interest in comedy. Like, and the opposite. Like, if I just threw a random metal band in front of you, well, 6 comics were on stage and like, here's a metal band in the middle, everyone would go to the bar.
Yeah.
Because that was not the mode that they were in.
That's not, exactly.
Yeah. When you do it at a festival, it's much easier because you create its own stage. Like when I did Fun Fest or Sound on Sound Fest, there's a stage off somewhere else that is only comedy.
Okay, so like a secondary stage kind of thing.
So people can go to that thing, go enjoy comedy, and when they want to see bands, they leave.
Okay.
They're not waiting for their band to play. Or they're not watching people talk, waiting for their band to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like they're making an active choice to go watch comedy. And that's perfect because comedy then allows, especially in a festival format, it allows people to take a breather and rest. Like comedy, I get to go sit down and I get to just not be in the sunny heat of a festival watching, sweaty people.
Yeah, jumping around.
Jump into my girlfriend and have to be like, my arm is out. I stop it. Like. So it works really well in those situations, but it doesn't work if you throw a comic up on the same stage as the bands and then like, well, hey, here's Brian Zeolla.
Yeah. Have you ever done that? Have you ever like...
I have. The first festival I ever did was a Houston one, and it wasn't like just opening for a band, but we were way too... like in the middle of the music festival. We were the way I describe it, I don't know if this will work for everyone, but like when you used to go to Vans Warped Tour, there was always the Ernie Ball stage where like local bands played.
Yep.
And it's just like right there in the parking lot, like right next to 2 of the big stages. So you hear Rancid on one stage, and Blink-182 on the other, and then you shitty like the guitar's not tuned band right in the middle, and nobody wants to hear that. So I remember seeing people like walk by my stage with their like hand visored against their face, like I don't want to make eye contact with this person. I just want to get to the stage I want to be at, and that sucked. It wasn't great, but then I've done great ones where it's tons of fun. Like Fest is the best example of it because Fest takes over Gainesville. And it's at a bunch of different places. So comedy is only at the one place in Gainesville. Okay. And so people have to actively go to that bar, go into the bar, get their wristbands checked, and then sit down, get a drink, and then there's comedy.
Yeah. So it's not even like...
It's just like comedy's happening in a city where a bunch of stuff's happening.
Now, when did they do... So, say this whole pandemic wasn't going on. When is Fest normally?
It's usually around Halloween.
Okay.
Whatever weekend works around Halloween.
Now, Gainesville, for people who don't know, is where the University of Florida is. Right. And it is a college town. The
college
town
towns
exists
are always
going
to be so much better for stuff like that. Comedy in general, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's because it's got younger, smarter people.
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing, too, when I did the show... when I've done a few shows now where the crowd is the crowd, right. And I try not to complain about the crowd, but the people who come up to me afterwards and are like, "Oh, that was a really good show," I'm like, "That's my demographic. That's who I want." More. It seems like they know what was going on. They followed the stories. They got the jokes, and then you know this as well as I do because the style. You'll have people come up to you after and be like, "Why didn't you do this?" or "You should have said that," and it's like. You weren't listening. Like you were only like you could only hear words like dick and pussy and cock. And because I don't say those things or because I don't say them as often, none of it registered. Because you've got awesome, like heavy hitting jokes, but if people aren't listening, then
it's hard and it's an active choice that I'm like, because I do write one-linery stuff too, but like I don't get anything out of that.
Yeah.
Like they're fun and they work, but the longer stuff, like, I'm taking a risk because people have to be into it. But I get way more out of it because I'm telling the story I want to tell.
Yeah, exactly.
And that we're both storytellers in that way. So it's harder, but, comedy's so weird, too, because the audience is always going to do that shit. There's always going to be someone who tells you what you should have done, which is so weird.
I don't understand it.
I don't, like, you don't go up to, Billy Corgan and be like, you should have played guitar this way. Like, that's not how artworks. You don't go up to a painter and be like, well, this brushstroke should have been a little more.
Yeah, should have. How many paintings have you done? None? Oh, thank you for your input.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but I've thought about it a lot, and I think comedy is so weird because everyone laughs, you know what I mean? Like that's such a base emotion, happiness and laughter, that everyone thinks they understand it. Like you start laughing when you're a baby. Yeah. So like, yeah, I know what works and doesn't work for me as a person for comedy, but you also have to be like, well, I'm also choosing a genre of comedy, and why am I at the one I hate? You know what I mean? I don't go to jazz shows and be like, be more aggressive. Like, what are you doing?
Let's amp it up back there, guys. Come on.
But stop boom booming.
The one thing I don't understand is when, and I guess I'm starting to, because what you just said about you start laughing when you're a baby, is that there's always those people who have made other people laugh.
Right.
So it doesn't matter that they've never done comedy before, never gotten on a stage. They're like, yeah, but I make people laugh at work all the time, like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
So they want to come up and tell you exactly what you're doing wrong. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, I don't know how to deal with it. I know I've been at shows, after shows with Marcus, and I know you're really good about kind of nodding and like, yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm too like aggressive. Yeah. Like, you know, I get very much like, who the fuck do you think you are? And that is not a way to treat anybody.
You can't do that. You know what I also learned? I had to like learn this trait. I had to get it out of my system. Was early on, a lot of people would come up and be like, hey, you were really great. And then I would always say something like, I mean, it wasn't that good. Like, I messed up here, and like I'd start telling them like why I wasn't good at comedy, and then they start breaking down your set. I just wanted you to think you were good. Let me be.
Yeah,
like
you start breaking down your set to them. Well, I missed this tag, and I was kind of upset about the way that
people are a little weird here. I don't know why. Did you notice that? I mean, I couldn't see you in the audience, but
to the left of the stage, though, I got a couple of groans. Do you know what that was about?
What up with that? What happened to them? What's their life like?
So you think it's going to come back? You think comedy's going to?
I don't see how it couldn't. Yeah. I mean, I don't know when. I don't know. I don't. This country's so stupid that nothing's going to actually like fully change. Yeah. You know, we'll be back to normal the moment we can be back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that means probably a vaccine will be the thing. Like, so we all just get COVID regularly and take medicine for it to get it away. But that I don't know. I don't know when it's going to happen. I do think it'll be back to normal though.
Well, I think comedy is one of those things like any other art where you can't. Like you can't create a vacuum of it and not you know what I mean, not fill that with something.
Yeah.
Because people need to laugh. I mean, and that's what, and Marcus was talking about this last week because he's been doing a lot of shows, and it's something I noticed at Veterans, and I'm sure you've noticed at Hyperion doing those shows, is that people will come out and they just kind of want to laugh. Like they just kind of want to go out for a night and have a good time.
Right. And we're going to have that for a little while. And then that honeymoon period will go away. And
it definitely
back
does.
to shitty people again.
Because that's what I've noticed when we first reopened the restaurant. People were coming in and tipping like 40%. And oh my God, thank you so much. I'm so happy you guys are open. We just wanted to get out of the house. And now we're back to normal where people are just pieces of shit. Tell me about with the outdoor show, how it's different, and this would be interesting, I think, to the audience, because like we talked about earlier, comedy is more conducive in a smaller space where you can get the laughter. Because I know when I did a couple outdoor shows, I thought I bombed terribly, and everyone's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. You just can't hear the laughter.
Yeah, that's a thing for sure. For the audience perspective, like to make you feel safe to come out, like it is a cool situation that shows can allow you to just be with your group at a table. You're not elbow to elbow or shoulder to shoulder. Like that is changed. Like now there's one table for you and your three people or whatever. And you can be a little safer in that way. I mean, I don't know the science of it enough to be like how far water droplets can travel and all that shit. But, I don't want anyone to not be comfortable. So if you're not comfortable, don't come, And the truth of the world is right now that, some people aren't great about following the rules of what should be happening, and they don't wear their masks and stuff. And, just stay away from those people because
absolutely,
they are bad people.
Do you notice a difference, though, when you're on stage? As
A
far
little
as,
bit. Hyperion was already running outside
Yeah.
before, so I've gotten used to that. So I don't really notice it in that way. I do miss doing more intimate indoor shows, of course. That's how I do comedy.
Yeah.
You know, I like dark rooms because I'm very sweaty, and it works better for me.
Yeah, I'm always. It doesn't even matter if I'm just like standing on stage. I start sweating.
Yeah.
Especially in Florida. Doesn't matter what time of the year it is. Outside, it's like, oh, this is gonna get gross.
Yeah,
Like real gross.
that is me all the time. I just like my dream in any situation is that it's raining hard outside. So whenever I walk into a room, I'm like, the rain, right?
Oh my God. I never even thought about that, but I do love it when it rains because when I go somewhere, I'm like, God, it's really coming down out there, man. So there has been some bright spots during this pandemic for us. You started coming to the AEW events.
Yeah,
with me.
we went to a bunch of wrestling shows together,
Yes.
which is a blast.
So one thing that Brian, Marcus, and myself all have in common is we are wrestling fans. Brian and Marcus more so than me, but Brian definitely.
Me more so than everyone. I'm the resident wrestling fan.
But it was cool. We got to go. The listeners know that I used to wait on Tony Khan at the restaurant, and he became one of my regulars. So we were able to go to these AEW shows, which was awesome because it was like almost like a. It was like the way I kind of describe it is it's like almost if your parents were like, do you want to have like a wrestling show? You know what I mean? Because it's like nobody else is there. Everyone's totally distant,
wild,
wearing masks.
It was a new experience for me for sure. Because wrestling is one of the only things I'll go to that is like really big crowds that like because that kind of stuff makes me anxious and uncomfortable, and I hate being in like stadium seating and just being like boxed up in that little seat and like you're rubbing elbows against someone you don't know and shit, and like this was incredible from that for me because you got a seat between you, you got a row between you, like you're not in anyone's way, but it was just also like I just have never experienced wrestling in that way. I've seen like little indie shows and stuff where there's not a lot of people, but not Kenny Omega, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what I thought was so cool about it was the fact that you could literally, they're like right in front of you. The first show that we all went to, because there still wasn't that many people there.
Yeah.
It was the very first one that we all went to, and it was like you could reach out and like touch them. Like obviously you wouldn't because of the pandemic.
Well, the first one I went to was the one where Orange Cassidy and Jericho got into the stands.
Yeah.
And they're like right in front of us.
Yeah. Thank God I wore my Mystic Rick shirt.
I mean, I don't feel that weird being near Orange Cassidy, but Jericho's a god.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched that guy for 30 years.
Yeah,
it's literally his 30-year reunion or not reunion, but anniversary is this week.
Yeah.
So I'm 35. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's so, oh God, I didn't even think about that. That is crazy.
Yeah. I told you my age. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. We were supposed to keep that a secret. All right. So we're coming to a close. I wanted to know something I ask all my guests. Do you have any story that kind of sticks out in your head as far as getting in trouble or any shenanigans, drunk or not drunk? I just always like to close the show with some big.
Sure.
I don't want you to burn any of your bits. So I don't want you telling me.
I had a really weird experience. This isn't drinking. This is drugs. Because I quit it altogether. Drugs was a weirder thing because it was more of a mental thing. Like I thought I started having a lot of panic attacks and I started feeling like blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I quit doing drugs for that reason. And then I quit drinking because I needed to be sober. Totally. But I never did a system. I never did like a 12-step program or anything like that. I have no accountability with my not drinking or not doing drugs. So every now and then I'll jump back and like drink 6 Smirnoffs in a minute.
Yeah.
And
ask the guy in the 12-step program to hold them for you while you drink them.
Oh, that was bad. I'm sorry. It's sorry.
Fine. I told you. I just wanted to bring it up.
Man, I remember because I didn't even think about that. And then you're holding these Smirnoff bottles for me and opening them for me. And I just am fuming Smirnoff smell.
It was fun, though. It was a great time. It didn't bother me. I just thought because you were so apologetic about it, I was like, oh, this is hilarious.
Yeah. So I got back. This is a few years into comedy, and everyone smokes weed in comedy. So you're like, well, maybe that makes you better when you're early on. I don't know.
You have no idea.
Yeah. So I was like, me and a friend were like, okay, I'm gonna smoke some weed tonight. Hadn't done it in years. I had probably quit smoking weed like 6 or 7 years before that.
Okay.
All drugs. So I was in his house, and he's kind of a rich dude. He had like a 3-story house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is in Texas?
This is in Houston, yeah. And so we're up like where his TV room is at the like very top floor.
Okay.
And we start smoking this weed. And it was kind of like a haircut for me where I like smoked one bowl and I'm like, fuck yeah. This is how I remember it. This is chill.
Yeah.
This is how I used to be in high school when I always smoked weed. Like, and I smoked another bowl, and I was like, no. Never again. Why would I ever do this?
Why did I do that?
And we were watching, it was like, it was late at night, but it was like Nicktoons. It was like some Nicktoon channel.
Okay.
So, and there was this weird commercial where they were like all the Nicktoons, and it was like 2011 or 2013 or whatever, so everything's like dubstep and shit, and there's just like bright colors, and I'm like having all that, like this sense bullshit happening, all this loud noises and bright colors, and then it's also something that's nostalgic for me, like I'm remembering all this like childhood moments, and I just start panicking.
Oh god.
And like at first I'm just like pulling a blanket over me. I'm like just scared. I'm like having like a Shining moment. Like this TV is throwing an axe through my bathroom door right now, and I hate it. And then I like look at him and he's just fine, and I'm like I get mad. I get really mad that he's just okay. So I tell him I need you to leave the room, and this is his house.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you need to go. You need to get out of here. I need you to go down all the way downstairs. And I remember like being like, you need to go all the way downstairs to like where your garage is, and you have a bedroom down there. Go hang out in there. Like I can't handle this right now.
What did he say?
He's like, all right, man. Like he's a friend I had in high school. He's gonna do it, and he goes. And then I remember like 15 minutes. I doing a thing where I just like have the light of my phone like up at the ceiling, so I could just focus on that one point, just the light of my phone, and I'm looking at it, and then I hear dishes. I hear like a pot and a pan, and like someone's cooking something, and I'm like, and I just start doing the math in my head, and I'm like, the kitchen's on the second floor.
Oh, God.
And I just start yelling, you need to go all the way downstairs. And so I didn't smoke weed again after that. That was it. That was done. Oh, my
God. That's intense. All the way down the stairs.
It's his garage. I was sending a man to his garage. It's not okay.
So now you don't do drugs anymore?
No, I don't.
Oh, man. Well, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
I'm glad you did it. Thank you so much.
Hell yeah.
Brian.
This is a blast.
Plug.
We just talk like we're friends. So.
I know. That's what we do anyway. Plug everything again one more time.
Hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Brian Zeolla. You'll see my name in the description on Apple, Spotify, or Stitcher. I've got shows at Hyperion every month, third Friday. I don't know. Start a Patreon for me and put money in it.
Beautiful. And of course, Brennan Tassif, Brennan T Comedy on all social media. And we will see everybody next week.